good that we're hearing at least politicians saying this is terrible, terrible. I just wish they'd said it at the time, when, of course, we had Mr. Bush denying it and Mr. Blair denying it, and the result was that Mr. Blair is now the peace envoy in the Middle East. Heaven spare us, but there we go. I think there's an awful lot of hypocrisy here. The fact of the matter is that routinely when armies go abroad to other countries far away, they torture and they abuse and they turn blind eyes. Look at Korea. Look at Vietnam. I could go through a whole lot more, and it will happen again. I don't think we care about the people whose lands we occupy, and that is the problem.
Let's go to the question of the significance of this for journalism, because you've said this is the most important proof so far that the internet is now doing a better job than newspaper or television journalism.
Yeah, I didn't say it was doing a better job. I don't think the internet does. I think it's full of hate and spite and lies. But what I was saying is that I was asking the question, what does this huge revelation of military secrets, unprecedented in history, what does it say about the old-style journalism that would be personified, for example, by Seymour Hersch in the United States, the guy who broke the My Lai story and regularly writes revelatory stories about the American military in the New Yorker? Here's a guy who goes to his sources within the military, gets a pretty good frame of the picture. But what is that compared to being able to press a button and get almost 500,000 military secrets on a screen in front of you? Now, what happens to all these big teams of investigating journalists that the New York Times boasts of, and which, in the days when it was a serious paper, the British Sunday Times used to have? Is there any point in having investigative journalism anymore if you're just going to sit back and wait for some strange code breaker from Australia to plonk them all on a screen in front of you? The real danger, I think, is that journalists will start to get lazy. We'll say, oh, well, you know, there's no point in investigating torture. It'll pop up on Wikileaks at some point. And that means that Wikileaks makes the choice of what secrets you see and what secrets you don't see. And it may be there are many other tortures of different kinds associated with us or not that we should be learning about. So, number one, we're allowing Wikileaks to set the agenda of whose torture we look at and whose we don't. And number two, the great danger of people saying, well, there's no point in reading Seymour Hersh or, you know, Rupert Murdoch's father revealing some truths about Gallipoli, for example. Those days are gone if we journalists just sit back and just press a button and say, OK, on Saturday, Der Spiegel, Al Jazeera, The Guardian, The New York Times will run the latest stuff off the web.
Daniel Ellsberg, the leaker of the Pentagon Papers all those years ago, regards WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange as pretty much a hero. And I'm wondering if you feel the same way. And I know you've expressed doubts about some of their methods, but bear this in mind. Some of his closest collaborators have expressed their extreme concern about the fact that in the first tranche of documents, the names of Afghan informers were included, and now the Taliban is talking about taking retribution against those people.
Yeah, I knew as soon as I heard that the Taliban would not miss the opportunity of putting that line in. Look, I think Ellsberg is wrong. There are two things here. First of all, that everything's now on screens, everything's now interneted, it can be changed and put up in their millions. In the past, you see, in previous wars, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, World War I, all the way back, everything was on paper. You would have a battalion file written down, typed up in triplicate with numbers on, and it would go into files. If there was a leak, you could trace it. So there weren't many leaks. Ellsberg's own papers, the Pentagon Papers, were on paper. They were not on screen. They were not on computers. And it needed someone from the inside to risk his career, perhaps his life, to grab the material that proved the lie. Ellsberg did. That's why he's so famous, and I think he's a very fine man. Assange didn't do that. Individual American soldiers, possibly at a higher grade than we realise, were involved in leaking this stuff, and I can imagine some of the reasons why. When you go to Iraq or Afghanistan, or when I'm in the States and talk to American officers, up to and including the rank of colonel, they're outraged by what's happened. Above the rank of colonel, they're approving of the administration because they want to get their retirement pensions and, you know, keep the badges on their shoulders. But the fact of the matter is that these days, you see, it's the ordinary junior ranks who are putting this stuff up, and it's people like Assange who are in no danger at all. I mean, Ellsberg was in grave danger, possibly of his life, but certainly his entire... He might have gone to prison for a very long time. We had stuff on paper, now it's not on paper, and there's no risk involved any longer. Not frankly, however much, you know, however romantic Assange thinks he is, or not as the case may be, in actually putting this stuff out.
Robert Fisk, I'm afraid to say that we are out of time. Once again, we thank you for joining us on Leyland. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We thank you very much for being there.
You're very welcome. Thank you.